All right, everybody. Welcome back to another Art with Errol podcast. This is our Monday check-in. Let's go, everybody. Man, oh man, I always say this. It's been a week. Mother's Day this weekend. I think I might have tuned this up just a little too high, but it was Mother's Day this weekend. You always want to try to do the best. To make either your loved one or your mom or whoever have a wonderful day. So, hope all the mothers out there had a great Mother's Day. And if you're a mother yourself, hope you had a great Mother's Day. But yeah, I'm Errol. I'm your host. We are, basically here talking about our adventure in social media and how we can progress. That's what this podcast is about. I'm an artist, a graphics designer, a gamer, and a content creator. All right, y'all. So, we can get started. My intro kind of sucks, but, I'm working on it. So this week, I kind of wanted to, touch about, everybody says you need a niche, right, to grow online. But what happens when you have multiple passions? Today, I kind of want to talk about figuring out, your niche and, without losing yourself, in the process, basically. We do art and gaming on my channel. So, I look at it like this. Those are two things that I've always had a passion for, so combining those two things to me was just logical. When I started my YouTube channel, I think that was 2017 or 2018, we figured out while looking up. We looked it up last week. I always forget. I think it was 2018. Let's just roll with that. 2018, right? I started it. I was doing some artwork, some gaming, game streaming and stuff, and I was trying to figure it out then. And here it is many years later, and I still struggling with the idea of this niche thing. And, we talked about how, like, jumping to Facebook to me was just a terrible idea. I should have just stuck with YouTube, especially because I was kind of growing a little bit. I had a little momentum. I had got up to 300 and something, almost 400 subscribers on our main channel. And, I could kind of look at that now, see where we're at right now. But the thing is, the art and gaming, is a combination that I think most people were either doing one or the other. So me combining them, we're at 385 now. So I don't remember what it was, what we got up to when we switched to Facebook. But figuring out what my channel was going to be focused on, I think, is where a lot of people kind of struggle. Like, what is your focus point, and does it have to be that? Is that what you just choose something, and are you just riding that out forever, And I think, it doesn't have to be just one thing, you don't have to stick to one thing, but, you should have a focus point around, what you're doing, right? I mean, algorithms rewards the focus, I think, and you don't want to confuse your audience, but you also kind of want to, have a little variety as well, I believe, And my experience, I guess, with trying to balance the two, I tried separating it. It's what I've been working on these last 2 years, right? Because originally it was all on one channel. And, maybe separating it wasn't a great idea. I don't know. It's yet to be determined. But one thing I've noticed is the gaming content channel is starting to grow faster than the art channel. And that's mainly because I don't have artwork to do every day. That's just, I don't have enough time to do that. But I can squeeze in like the bit of gaming news, which we've been doing, which has been, kind of building the channel. And since I do that as a short, and as we talked about before, doing the two types of formats, your 16 by 9 and your 9 by 16, gives you opportunity to be spotted. Even though it's the same video, it gives you the chance to be seen by two audiences. One that likes to watch that long form, just holding the phone like this, and folks who watch it from the computer or whatever, or the TV. So having the two formats for the content, I think, is crucial in that as well. But going back to like the niche, right? So we divided our art and gaming up, but with gaming you can also do other things that are like, still in the realm of gaming, but there are different types of video. You can do unboxing type stuff. You get new hardware, you get a new controller, you get a new headset, you get, let's say we get the Steam machine or the Steam controller or the Steam frame. We could make a video into that, and that's, still within the realm of gaming, but it's a different video. It's not like a gaming video, right? So, and it's outside of, like, I've been doing more news heavy kind of content by just doing a bit of gaming news. And, my streaming has dropped because I can't stream every day. I don't have that kind of time. So, squeezing all the things I want to do in and balancing this stuff out, it has been a tremendous challenge, and I think trying to figure things out, and that balance is going to be always challenging. With the art content, I love doing the art content, and we've been doing well, getting at least 2 days of art, 1 day of podcasting. Hopefully, well, I've been trying to get the game stream in, but it's not always feasible for me to get that in. So, if I can get the game streams like constantly on Fridays, that would be wonderful. I'll be happy with that. But, your niche, it can be like, I think, your personality also. It could be your perspective. It could be your journey. It could be, your consistency. It could also be, the way you tell stories, your storytelling. I think all those are a form of a niche, So if you're looking for your niche and you're still trying to figure it out, I mean, I think most of the YouTubers now, they're all doing that, what would you call it? It's like the content where, people are, it's like drama kind of content. They're looking at like these police arresting them folks, or like, the ICE stuff, or the war and stuff, or, they're doing more, I guess, political type stuff, that's all been kind of popping off now, and that just ain't my forte. So I try to stay in my lane, but branching out is a good thing. And this is a good example because I used to love to watch the Hodge twins, back in the day, because they used to do these great workout videos, and they did the eat whatever you want, at the end. I used to love that. But then turn around nowadays, they're doing more political stuff, and they just had a podcast with Charlie Sheen, which was a great podcast. I watched it and I was like, oh man, this is great. I didn't even know the Hodge twins was doing that. And I'm like, wow, man, look at the change, and they had like a niche of, more workout and comedy kind of stuff, to now more political and more podcasting stuff, which is, it's cool to see them still prospering and did I say that right? I'll mess up a word, y'all. I'm sorry. still, doing stuff. But it's just interesting because I used to watch them for the workout videos. And, that just goes to show that, your niche can change, it can change, you don't have to be locked to one type of content. You don't have to be locked to one type of style. You don't have to be locked to, that one idea that you had when you started, So, I mean, it's cool to see that there's always a path for change and still have success. And I think, doing for you what feels natural, I think is important, because you don't want the content to drain you. You don't want the content to get stale. You don't want your content to no longer have any feelings behind it, right? So I think feelings are a main driver. If people can tell you're excited about something, people can get a feeling from you, right? Then I think that leads to more viewership or more interactions or more likes or whatever you want to call it, but at the end of the day, you have to have, that kind of drive behind it. It's also great to stay consistent. And, sometimes you're going to have days where you're going to make content and you're just not going to be in it. It happens to everybody. I mean, sometimes, you're just not going to be in it. But, to be in it more times than not is always a good thing. And, to know that you don't have to be locked into a certain type of content, I think is a really big thing, because my content is I'm trying to force a change because the game streams weren't really doing anything for me. So lessening the game streams and pushing more art and, just doing maybe a bit of gaming news. So I'm still kind of in the gaming sphere, with the gaming channel. Excuse me. But I'm also, trying to push more towards my art side, my artistic side, to bring that back up. And I feel like, we're moving in the right direction. I just need to do more with like making more shorts or like, making smaller art videos that I can post on days that, and I've been thinking about how I can do that, I would like to do more with the podcast, but I'm just not there on the level with the podcast for like having guests and stuff and doing that type. I would like to do that at some point. But for right now, I think what I've said before in the past with the podcast is it's more of me kind of dumping ideas and hopefully helping other people see what kind of mental struggles I'm going through with trying to figure this whole process out. It would be nice to be able to do more, but like I said, time is very limited. I work an 8-hour shift and then I make content, and then I usually got to pick up my children and take them to after school activities and do whatever, and their family time, sleep, shower, sleep, all that stuff. And then you start the day over, so time is very limited. I'm not a full-time content creator. I'm more of a, this is an experiment. This is a, part-time or like not really part-time, but like a hobby, I guess, a hobbyist of it, and seeing if I can push, how far can you push as a hobbyist, I guess, that's a thing. So, but having a niche, to a degree is very important, in your growth of your channels and, becoming a content creator. You want to have some direction on where you're going. So if your channel is, kind of struggling and, maybe you need to look at your niche. Maybe your niche, either you're not into it or maybe, you are misaligned with it, I think there's a big difference between, passion and strategy, right? Passion, is what you love. You love this thing. Your strategy is what's going to help people find you. If I said that right, hopefully I said that right. I think the goal is to try and combine those two things. With your channel, which be your passion and a strategy to help you be found. So knowing your niche, I think is a huge thing. You gotta discover what your channel is. And I think for the longest time I've been kind of struggling with that. And I think that was partially why I separated everything when I came back to YouTube after doing Facebook for whatever period of time that I should have just not switched over. To jump to Facebook and I wasn't multi-stream. I think multi-streaming was still in its infancy stage, through that pandemic and all that. And then, it got real big, and then, Streamlabs added it in, then, they got a plug-in for OBS, and now there's, anybody can multi-stream now, right? So, I think the evolution of figuring this out is also changing, but at the end of the day, you still got to have that identity for your channel. And I think the niche is important in that aspect, knowing the direction you're going, I guess. And, having that kind of thought process is, really important, And you ain't got to figure things out immediately. I think, you can figure things out along the way, which I've always been the kind of person that, I dive into something and I just kind of figure it out as long as I'm going and just keep working on it. And, I think that's what we kind of talked about a lot over the last podcast, what I've been doing the podcast for a year now, almost, or a year. So I don't think you got to figure it out immediately, but you definitely want to have that direction, and you don't have to stay the same forever. And the Hodge Twins is a great example of that, because look at it, they got a great podcast. They making those videos where they be talking about the people getting arrested and all that stuff. I mean, it's really cool. And I remember when I was still in the service, and I was watching them do all the workout videos, because that's what interests me. I want to get in shape. I want to be, they in great shape. I was like, yo, that's a huge change. Because they went from the workout videos to comedy to what they're doing now. So that's quite interesting, right? Quite interesting, I believe. So, directions for me, I'm not really good at making that kind of content, so I don't think I want to dive into doing those type of videos. And plus, I really don't have time, to set up to watch, the content and figure out what I'm gonna say about it, like that. Especially when I've already separated all my stuff up. I've got the gaming channel, the art channel, and the podcast is just lumped in with the art channel. So, sorry, y'all, I had to take a drink. My throat gets dry. But I think about, the direction I'm going, and we're still growing. It's just been very, very slow. And, I'm happy with the direction of things. Obviously everybody wants to do more. But like I said, you're limited by the time that you have in a day to make stuff. Especially if you're doing the stuff like I am, you working a job, you got family, you carve out your little 2 hours or whatever you got to make your content. You're kind of limited on what you can get done, because as soon as I'm done with this, I need to, get it uploaded to Spotify and YouTube, right? Because I'm only streaming this here on Twitch, which Twitch has always, like I said, Twitch has always been a slow, low growth platform for me. I just don't get any reach on Twitch, but I do grow on YouTube, and the thing is like the channel has been growing, both channels. The art channel, I mean, even though it's low numbers, +3 in the last 28 days, it's still in the positive. And when I look at my gaming channel, we're +27 in the last 28 days. And, the cool thing about that is the gaming channel will help build our audience, and I will continue to try to, use the gaming channel to push people to the art channel. Hopefully it'll work out in the end. At least that's the idea behind it. At least that's the idea behind it, and I'll continue to go the direction I've been going. I got some kind of notification I didn't even see, but it's all good. We'll close that out. So where are we at, y'all? We're 21 minutes in, and I done covered a lot of what I want to talk about today, but we can talk a little bit about what we got going on this week, I think. So this week, I'm going to be continuing my father's portrait. I said this before. He passed away in February, and I've been doing artwork in dedication to him, which was the Jimi Hendrix painting was dedication, and this portrait. So the goal is to push hard to do that on Wednesday and Thursday, hopefully. I think Thursday I have an appointment, so I may actually only get Wednesday this week. And then Friday, if I can, I want to get further in mouse PI for hire, but I'm only streaming once a week. So I think what I may do, since I think Forza comes out Friday, right? Forza Horizon 6, I may actually game stream Forza. So I may need to make space on my computer, delete a game or something, and then bring Forza online. And that way I have something we can try, something new we can experience, and that'll be for the gaming channel. So we know for sure, I should be able for sure get Wednesday a good painting session in for the portrait. And then, I may be a wash on Thursday, and then Friday I should be good to get the game stream in. So, at least I think that's the plan for the week, and I think with it separated, I think it's going to be fine. I could have lumped it all back into one channel, when I came back to YouTube, but, so many folks that I noticed have like at least 2 channels. I mean, like we talk back about the Hodge Twins, I think have 3 or 4 channels. I can't remember how many channels they have. They have a few channels. So, and I think that's a part of the growth strategy, right? Is to have more reach that way, so you can be seen. That's why it's important to make sure you're titling yourself, your identity, right? So I'm Art with Errol online, right? So I think it's important that be the core of your title. You have to be Art with Errol. I'm Art with Errol on Twitch, YouTube, X, Spotify, all that stuff. You got to be the same name. You got to keep it the same. Art with Errol Gaming and Art with Errol on YouTube. That's how you got to keep it that way. when you pop up, hopefully it'll pop up, the other stuff. So you'll get the art and the game, and will pop up hopefully when you're being searched. Because I think for the Hodge twins, let me see how they do. I'm kind of stuck on them because I just watched that Charlie Sheen podcast, which was a wonderful podcast. Y'all should watch it if you haven't watched that podcast. That was a great podcast. Let me see here. So, I'll just type in Hodge twins and see what pops up. You know what I mean? So yeah, they got. Let me go to their channel real quick. I think it gives. So they got 1, 2, 3, 4 channels, man. They got 4 channels, man, which is crazy. They got 4 channels. I don't know how they keep up with all that. That's a lot. I struggle to keep up with the channels I got. So, that's interesting that they have 4. That's a lot, and they must have help. I'm assuming they have help to run those channels. I think once you get, to a certain growth point and you're earning money, I think you can, then afford help to run your channels. That's probably what most of the, guys that are successful at social media to do. But, at the end of the day, I think what we're talking about today is just finding your niche, man. Figuring out, your direction and knowing that if you've been trying the same thing for the longest time and maybe it's not working or you're not seeing any positives, maybe it's time to take a look at your passion for it, your strategy, or maybe it's changing it up to something different. Maybe evolving it, evolving the niche to something different, because it's possible. Obviously, what we looked at, or talked about, it's possible to change to something and be successful. So that's important to know. That's important to work towards too, and I think that's what I'm working towards. Is just building our niche, which is art and gaming. I just divided it up into 2 channels. We'll be keeping it all on one here on Twitch, and the podcast is sort of kind of separate because it's available on Spotify as well as Apple and Amazon and all that, right? So the fact that I still kind of have a lot of separate stuff, I was trying doing it on X, but I just wasn't getting no love on there, so it made no sense to have it live on X when nobody was joining in. Maybe it's after you get some kind of audience, you can go live in more and more places or whatever. But I think the way I got it now is good for now until we can gain our artistry society, build upon our group, which will be called the Artistry Society. That's what I want to do. So, building our community. That's what I was trying to say. I don't know why the word was, beside me at the time. Sometimes I just get, brain farts, I guess. It's okay. You finish 8-hour shift, you come home, and, I'm trying to do this, So we're making it happen. So at the end of the day, I feel good about the direction I've got going. I think I have 2 still solid niche, artwork, is something that I'm very passionate about. I love art, I think I probably could speak more when I'm doing actual artwork, but I just sometimes I could just zone out, man. I can just dive into a painting and I just like I'm so focused that I forget like, oh shoot, I'm supposed to be like kind of engaging a little bit, so I try to work on getting better at that. Bob Ross, I used to watch him as a kid, and he was just phenomenal in his ability to, talk about what he was doing as he was doing it. I don't think I have that teacher instinct in that capacity, but maybe that's something I just need to keep, working on to get better at doing. But as far as the gaming, I think the bit of gaming news has been our bread and butter for like building our channel. As I progress at getting better at doing that, if I can get my hands on that Steam controller, we'll do an unboxing video. That's another piece of content. And going from there, I think this has been a interesting ride. I've watched folks come and go. You have people that join your channel, they show up sometimes or they don't show up. There's always going to be ins and outs. I think the fact of being consistent, and I've tried my best to be as consistent as I can over these last 2 years, and for the most part, progress has been showing on the gaming channel. I just need to get that same level on the art channel and on Twitch, which, like I said, the issue with Twitch is it's a streaming platform that you got to stream. And I think the only way you really grow on Twitch is to stream 8+ hours. And I don't have that time. So that's why I always say that, I never really worry about growing on Twitch, because people won't find you unless you're available a lot longer time for people to come and sit with you and then kind of, oh, okay, I see this guy. I think that's the only way you get discovered. So me doing these 30 to 40 minute streams or an hour stream, sometimes 2-hour streams, it's not enough, I think, for Twitch growth. It's the folks that do the 8-hour streams and whatever, they get more interactions because people will eventually find them because they're like, oh, this guy's live, let's take a look. By the time they discover me, I'm done streaming, or my podcast is ended, or I'm done doing my painting or whatever, because my time is usually 1 to 2 hours, somewhere in the realm of that. The podcast is usually only 40 minutes. So I think the growth for Twitch will have to come from people finding me through YouTube. And then if people bleed over, then, hey, it is what it is. That's how I think it's going to work. Excuse me, y'all. Have to take that drink. Need a little something to quench your thirst. Anyway, so we've been talking about niche, and, figuring it out for yourself, don't box yourself in. And I think that's, in the title. Don't box yourself in. Know that you can change, you can change your niche, if and kind of what we talked about earlier. I think that your personality, your perspective, your journey, your consistency, your storytelling, all those things can be your niche, or a part of your niche, the way you do things, But having and knowing your niche, I think, is critical to success. So that's about all I wanted to cover today, y'all. And, we talked about the week. You can always find me on Spotify. You can find me on Twitch, Art with Errol. Pretty much Art with Errol everywhere. On YouTube, we got the 2 channels, Art with Errol and Art with Errol Gaming. And X is Art with Errol, so it's real easy to find me. I keep the logo the same, so you should be easy to find. And I think that's going to be a wrap on the day, y'all. I was trying to think what else I needed to say. Don't forget to follow, like, subscribe, whatever it is, on whatever platform you are joining me on, and become a member of the Artistry Society. And, that's all you got to do is just subscribe or follow, You ain't got to, I ain't asking for no money. I'm just looking for folks to be a part of our community. So, thank you for listening, and don't forget, we will be going live on Twitch for doing the portrait on Wednesday. And then I'm going to try to stream Forza on Friday. So that's our next 2 days, and you can always catch the bit of gaming news that I'm doing on the Art with Errol gaming channel on YouTube. So, till next time, you know what to do. I'm out of here, man.